Hello everybody, it's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty, episode 16 for July the 9th, 2021. And this is a continuation of last week's show where we talked about 30 plus hacks and other unexpected tools for your sewing room. Well, we didn't get through all 30 of them, and we got through about half. And so we're going to finish up the second half right now. We've added a couple of things too, because it's amazing how you start to look around and you find things that you forget because you use them so often that they're actually something that other people might not think of as a hack or as a sewing tool, because they're probably used for something else. So we're going to start in with canvas frames. Canvas frames, you know, the kind of thing you buy at the art store, at Michael's or wherever. For painting. Well, these work as a really nice design wall, a mini one. Now, I don't have room in here to have a design wall. So oftentimes when I'm putting together blocks, I will put them on this. Now, what I did was I just took basically the canvas frame and I covered it in a piece of batting. This is actually Battleizer because it's less fluffy. And my fabric material pieces stick right to it, just like a design board. So if you're doing something like a bunch of blocks that all have a bunch of pieces, like a 9 patch or 4 patch or something like that, you can lay them all out on this, and it's portable, and your pieces won't fall off. And you can take this to wherever you're doing your sewing or wherever you need to have it. What I'll do is if I'm in the middle of a project, I'll line the pieces all up on here, and when I finish sewing for the day, I'll just leave whatever I've got done on here and come back to it the next day. But another benefit of this is I took this and I had some old, and don't mind the glue that's stuck on them, but these are some old cork tiles. You know, the kind of thing you use sticky strips and put them on your wall to make an instant bulletin board. Well, I glue gunned them to the back of this frame. And why would I do that, would you think? Well, sometimes you need to use pins on a design board. So now I have a backing, a cork backing that will hold the pins if I need to do it that way. If you just put it through the canvas, there's nothing there to hold them. They just flop all over the place. But with some of this cork.
Can you show the cork?
Yeah, I just did. That's cork,
okay.
Right there. I showed. Where were you?
I don't know.
Are you here?
Asleep.
Like sleep. Okay, I'm glad we're keeping you up. Yeah, so that's another thing. And something else that you could use is you can use this part of it as a tray because you've got a lip all the way around here. So if you got a few things that might be rolling around or whatnot, you do it this way. So really, this is very, very versatile. And if you don't want one this big, you can get a smaller canvas frame, or you maybe want them in various sizes. In fact, before I made that one, I made this one. It's a little smaller, and I use it for the same purpose. The only difference here is this was a piece of really heavy cardboard, and I covered it in a piece of, well, it's a kind of a cotton.
Looks like a cotton twill.
Yeah, must have been a cotton twill, and I use that as well too.
Oh, no, it looks like canvas. It's canvas.
Well, I don't know where I got it, but I got it from somewhere. So whatever, but you could cover it with Battleizer, you could cover it with batting, whatever. And again, that's another way to make it if you don't want to use a frame, a canvas frame. Works the same way. Okay, so what are you going to show first?
Okay, well, a couple of times it wasn't a hack. We were looking at tools for sewing. So I'm just bringing this one back up again. It's a hump jumper. Like it's
hump jumper.
Janome puts this, and this is basically what it does is levels your foot when you're sewing, when you're going over a hump, right? Because sometimes the foot will start tilting up and it won't go over the hump properly. So what you do, if you push the back of your foot up so it's level with the thick part, it goes over that thick part a lot easier, right? Mm-hmm. So Janome gives you one of these, and it's also for sewing on buttons. It gives you a shank. And I bought this one recently. It's just a Dritz point turner. So it has an end to it which helps you put a point in for when you're turning fabric over. Like when I'm doing a collar, I use the point on this or a crochet hook or something like that to do that. But it also has two these hump jumpers, but they're also used for putting on buttons. And this one's good for putting on small buttons, and this one's good for putting on big buttons. But you can also use it as a hump jumper, which is good.
It's got measurements on it too.
Yeah, it has measurements.
So you can use it quick.
So actually, I really like this thing. Bought it, but anyway.
Well, it's a 3-in-1.
Yeah, and now Janome comes with a special foot that supposedly helps you go over a hump, which is the A foot,
isn't it?
I believe.
Yeah.
And you supposedly push this button in, and then it's supposed to keep the foot level with your hump. But I don't know. I've never had great success with this foot.
I've used it very sparingly.
And the other thing I don't like about it is that if I'm sewing with a different foot and I suddenly have to go over a hump, I don't really want to have to change my foot out to a different foot to use this foot to go over a hump. So that's why I like using these hump jumpers or whatever, right? But if you don't have a hump jumper, you can still fudge it. You can. What I sometimes do is if I can't find those, I'm messy and I can't find anything in my sewing room, I'll take a piece of spare cloth and I'll fold it a couple of times to make it level with the end of your foot, with the end of your foot, depending on how thick you want it to go, to make it equal to the size of the hump. And you shove it underneath the foot, and it'll make it level, your foot level, so that you can go over the hump easier. And that's really kind of a hack. You can basically shove anything under your foot, as long as it doesn't hit the needle, to make it level with the hump. So, but those are things. This is safe because if the needle goes through the fabric, it's not a big deal. So.
And so this thing is referred to as a hump jumper.
Or it's also a shank. I can't remember what it's called. It's for making shanks on your buttons.
It just sounds like a sexual tool to me. Hump jumper. I don't know. But
anyway, that's sort of like a kind of a mini hack for going over a hump jumper because, and you know, often people don't think of doing things like this. So, I mean, it's something simple. You just grab a piece of fabric and roll it up.
It's a cheap hump jumper.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Okay, well, hold off on your other stuff unless it's related to this.
No.
Okay, because we have more here. So, behind Walter, you can only see it partly, and I'm going to turn the camera a little bit more. If you look up there on top of that filing cabinet, you see there's a wooden frame with some tubes of things hanging out of it. Well, that's just a cheap old wine rack. It's one of those ones that it's no bells, no whistles kind of a thing. And yeah, it's meant for wine bottles if it was sitting on its edge. But what I did was I took a piece of cardboard, I glued it with my hot gun to the bottom of that, and now it has a bottom, and I put my extra stabilizers, rolls of stabilizer or applique materials or whatever, I stick them in that. There's even some rolls of vinyl in there and faux leather as well. It's just a way to keep them all organized. But another way you can do it is, it holds smaller rolls, but I have a tendency to buy big rolls of stabilizer. This is for embroidery. And the problem is, how do you really store these? Because they're bulky and you don't want to be putting them in something and then having other stuff piled up on them. So if you go to the dollar store, you can buy cheap waste paper baskets, wire. And guess what I do with that? There we go. All in its own nice little container. Now, yeah, you're going to say, well, really? Is that really necessary? Yeah, it is for my setup because I don't have any shelf space. This has to actually sit on the floor. It sits down by the door and behind the door. There's a bunch of other rolls in there in a cardboard box standing on their end. But this is my biggest roll of stuff, and I reach for this all the time because it's water-soluble stabilizer, and I use that a lot in my embroidery. So this just keeps things nice and neat. Also, waste paper baskets are something you can't have too many of in your sewing room either. So, you know, why spend an arm and a leg? Go to the dollar store. I think those things cost about $4. Yeah, it's a dollar store. Well, it's one part of a dollar, I guess, or multiple dollars. So that's another tip. Now, something else. Bungee cords and clamps. What would you use bungee cords and clamps for? Well, now I don't do it this way anymore, but my sewing room, you know, is very, very tiny. And I don't have enough space to spread out a quilt if I want to quilt it. If I've got a queen size quilt, there's just not enough room. It drops into space on the left side of my sewing machine. And at the front of my sewing machine, well, yeah, there's a fair amount of room there if I clean off my cutting table, but it's still not wide enough. It's long enough, but it's not wide enough. So I rigged up a bungee cord. I got the hiccups. Bungee cord setup. We have open rafters above us. I put in some eye screws, and I hang bungee cord from that. I have 4 of them up there, and I hang a clamp, a cheap plastic clamp that you can buy. I think you got a bag of them for me for $11 or something, various sizes.
Yeah,
that
I
bag
did.
over
Yeah,
there.
I went over to Home Depot and got them. Yeah,
and I clamp the quilt into it. Lifts the weight of the quilt up off the table and off my sewing machine, and away I go. And it does work. It does work. Now, there are apparatuses you can buy. I think actually Dime sells one that sort of, you have to set them up around your sewing machine, and they kind of look like a sling, or a hammock kind of a thing. They don't look that great to me, and they're very expensive, several $100s American for one of them. I don't know, maybe you have one and it works fine for you.
I mean, the setup you have, it may not be good for everybody because they don't really have open rafters.
If you don't have open rafters, okay? But if you do, it does work. The only thing is, and the reason I don't do this anymore is because I actually have enough huge folding tables that I can set up a whole area for quilting in another part of our rec room down here, just on the other side of the wall over here. And that gives me lots of space to spread the quilt out and distribute its weight. But before I figured that out, I was using the bungee cords, and they do work with it. They lift the weight up off your sewing machine with it. So, you know, if you have open rafters, that may be a solution for you as well. Another thing from the dollar store, a must-have in your sewing room, lint roller. I have several. Why? Well, because you got little threads, right? All over your quilt or whatever you're sewing, or you probably use it with your garments, right?
Yeah.
And so you need to clean those things off. And picking them off with your fingers is a bit of a pain in the butt. So one of these works really well. Now, the beauty of buying them at a dollar store is that they are cheap in a dollar store. Plus, you can get the refills for them. So this is that peel and stick kind of paper that's on here. So, you know, you just take it off. Right now, you can tell I've used this one quite a bit. Oops. Just peel it off, and you got a real fresh one again, and away you go. Also, when you're finished sewing, you're probably covered in threads. And if your house is anything like ours, I'm constantly picking up threads off my carpet. So anything to cut down on that in the other parts of the house, well, this is a cheap solution to that. Okay, so what do you got over there?
Yeah, well, last time I was talking about a point press. I mean, I hate to repeat, but a point press for pressing out the points like on a collar or something like that. And you can buy them on Amazon or whatever, $30 or $40 or whatever. But I just have a cheap piece of wood that I've cut into a point, and I use that. So this is what I've got.
That's pretty thick, though.
It's just but you got to iron on top of it.
Oh,
right. To open your seams up, you can use it to open your seams up, right, on an area, and then you can also
hold it up.
You can also, it has a nice little point that I just cut with a saw. Actually, I cut it with a hand saw, and you shove it into the point at the end of a collar, and it gives you a nice crisp. A nice crisp crease when you're pressing it. So that's just a simple hack. You can buy probably one of these pieces of wood for a couple of dollars at the Home Depot.
And you don't need to cover it with anything?
Not really. It's not sanded real well, but it's like it's just off the shelf. I haven't done anything to it. So, and it works fine. That's what I use.
Well, I use a round piece of doweling when you need to open up your seams and press them open. if it's in an awkward spot, you can put a piece of doweling in. And I use that actually. I've never used it with a quilt, but I've used it when I've been making bags because certain ways that panels go in. So it's another thing, it's just a piece of doweling. But it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of doweling in around. I find that they come into handy for all kinds of things. And you know, if you go to a craft store like Michael's, you go to the kids section of crafts, you can buy a tube of different size pieces of doweling that are about 1 foot to 15 inches in length. And I've had one of those for years. And yeah, it works for things. Now, pushing out points. When I push out points, I use this.
No, I use one of those to push a point out. But when you're doing a collar, you have to iron the point out. So
well, never mind.
So
but this is
I don't use it to push it out. What I use something like this.
Okay.
This to push it out. Because
that's what I was trying
crochet hook.
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out how to get it in there.
Point press. You're pressing your fabric into the point. Right. So if you have a collar, when you're doing a collar like this, right, you have this point at the end, right, and you have to put the point press inside, and then you can press this point out.
Oh, okay. Didn't understand that, but then again, I don't make garments, so that would be the problem.
So when you got to get into an area to press that's in the edge of a point of some sort, or a point of a bag or something like that, then you can use this.
Okay. And you can talk about that because you can't find yours usually.
No, I could find it. I forgot about it.
Do you use that?
What, for measuring?
Yeah.
Sometimes, not very often though.
Oh, okay. Well, I use one of those quite a bit when I need to measure my full quilt so I can figure out how I'm going to square it up when it's done. I like this because then I can lock it. Now, I've used a cloth one as well, but I find with this, if I have more quilt than I have tape measure, like this one only goes 10 feet. Well, 10 feet's pretty good.
Yeah, see, I don't really need to measure things that long. I just need to measure small things. So I don't usually use a tape measure in quilting unless I'm measuring the width of my cutting mat or something.
Well, you want to know something? I still think this is something you can buy them cheap.
Yeah.
You can get them at the dollar store too, or Crappy Tire. For those of you that are Canadians, you know what I mean by Crappy Tire, or Walmart. And I still think it's a good thing to have. Now, you can buy ones that retract that are cloth at your quilt store or in a sewing store as well. And I've got one of those, and I use it too.
Yeah, but it doesn't give you the length if you're measuring a really large...
No. They're meant for smaller things. But anyways...
Plus, the one, I don't know about the one you have, but the one I have that retracts doesn't retract very well.
Oh, mine works okay. Mine's a Clover, I think. I probably paid like $20 for it.
Well, mine was the freebie we got at the sewing retreat.
Oh.
And I have a feeling they're rejects.
Well, you got the cheap one. Okay. So what else have you got over there?
Well, I know. I just brought a couple things that I thought were
Remember,
important.
the camera's there. You have a chance to show it down there.
This bottle of Fray Chatty, I occasionally use it on a spot where I'm afraid it's going to fray and I can't get at it to sew. So I'll put a little bit of this on it.
Well, I have it too, and I use it lots of times. It's good if you're doing serging. For example, if you're serging, say, napkins. Well, you know, you got the long chain piece and you cut that off. Well, you got to be careful with that because you can unlock your chains if you cut too closely. But you don't want a big thing hanging over the edge, right? Because it makes it look unfinished. So what you do is before you cut off those ends, go right to the corner of your placemat or your napkin and put a few drops of this on and let it dry. It dries within, let it sit for half an hour, and it's probably drier sooner. In fact, if you want, you can apply a little heat to it, but make sure you've protected your iron when you do that. Like use a Teflon pressing mat or something for that, because then you'll get gummy all over your iron bottom. But it does work really well for that solution. But yeah, I've used it for all kinds of things. You know, like I've even used it to kind of glue together a seam that came open in the process. Now, I don't know if it washes out or not.
Technically, it's not supposed to wash out, so I don't know how durable it is.
No.
I've had it where I've had a sewing flaw on a garment, and it's a spot I can't easily fix. So I've put this on it.
I also use Fabric Fuse, which is another glue. It looks like a white glue and it dries clear, and I've used that on a few things. And it's one too that is permanent after it dries, so it doesn't wash out. But it's good for, like, if it's something that you got to fix and you can't really get in there with your sewing machine to fix it. I mean, I'm talking about little things.
If you're a spot, like a little tiny spot that you think, or you're afraid that it's going to fray, it's good to put that on there just to ensure that it's not going to fray.
Yeah. So talking about glues, there was something that's made me think of, and I've lost my thought, but that's okay. So next thing, show you. Oh yeah, we're talking about getting glue on the bottom of your iron. Okay, now I've already done a whole thing on Idiot Quilter about cleaning your iron, but this is kind of a review. But the two things that I need for cleaning my iron are right here. This is a dryer sheet,
which has unused dryer sheet.
An unused dryer sheet, yes. And this is, well, this one's been used, but this is Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. Okay, so if you've just got a little bit of discoloration, a little bit of gooey or something on the bottom of your iron, you can take one of these sheets. Actually, I take two. I double them up, one on top of the other, unfold them, lay them down on my pressing mat, and run my hot iron over top of it. Go around swirling up and down. Sometimes I give it a little blast of steam as well. And surprisingly, this will take a lot of the gunk off of your iron. But
yeah, or if you've just quickly run over some fusible stabilizer and you had it the wrong way around or something, or a little piece got on there, that on the iron, and sometimes I have it where the iron feels like it's going a little rough or it's sticking a little bit, right? I run that over top of one of those and it cleans it right up.
And there's another advantage. If you have your pressing mat, I have a wool pressing mat, but it doesn't matter what kind of pressing mat, it'll smell really nice. And so every time you iron for a little while after that, you'll get a little burst of this, like whatever the scent this was. Now, of course, these ones are scented. You can buy unscented ones too, but I kind of like the scent because it smells very fresh.
Well, actually, I asked you about whether it's a used one or an unused one because I mentioned that to the group that I sew with, right? And somebody said, well, I've tried the dryer sheet and it doesn't seem to work for me. And I said, well, was it a used one or an unused one? And she said, it was a used one. Well, I said, well, the used ones aren't going to work very well.
Because this is coated with basically fabric softener or something like that. Yeah. And I don't know what the chemical principle is behind it, but it's that stuff that this is infused with that is taking off the gooeys on the bottom of your iron. So if you don't have any, if you're using a used one, obviously it defeats the purpose with that. Now, the Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, if you've got something that's really stubborn, take this, put it down on top of your mat, and I did a demo of this, and do the same thing. Just go around.
Wet it, right?
And you can.
Oh, okay.
I start dry.
Oh, okay.
And then I give it a little burst of steam.
Oh, okay.
And then around that, but I start dry with it. And it will, that's why this one looks this color, because it discolored after I used it. And this is still good. I can still use this, okay? So until it gets down to a little bitty piece, so it's economical too. But it does a really good job. I do not recommend the creams. They plug up your holes. I have not had any luck with those iron cleaning creams. I've tried 2 different brands before, both name brands. I think one was made by Dritz, and it's been around for 100 years, and I don't know. I didn't do a thing for me. These 2 methods did. And this will not scratch the bottom of your iron. So don't take a piece of steel wool or an SOS pad to your iron, because you're going to scrape off the bottom. And if you scrape the bottom off, you have little micro grooves on there that are going to catch on everything.
Yeah, like this looks like a scouring pad, but it's not a scouring pad. Don't use a scouring pad on the bottom of your iron.
Don't. Yeah. This is a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. I think everybody knows about these. They've been around now for a while. They're great for taking marks off your walls and things like that, but they will not scratch. So use it. It's good. Another thing for storing small parts, now we're going to move into a little bit more about storage, I think. I was trying to put this together in a more organized fashion. Needles. How do you store your needles?
Actually, I got them all in a little bag. I should get. I have one, I think, somewhere that I can use.
Yeah, this might have been yours.
Yeah.
I don't know. I found it somewhere. This is meant as a storage box for little screws and nuts and things like that. Well, it works perfect for your needles. These little sections fit the cases pretty good. And I have them all organized in here by the different types of needles that I have. And because of the way this particular box is designed, this lip that separates comes right to the top of the lid itself. So I can do that, and I can do that, and everything stayed in their spot. Because after all, that's something you might want to look at when you, because I mean, these boxes are a dime a dozen, but check for that, because if you drop this and it doesn't have that raised top here, your organization is,
of course,
you're
there's
screwed.
got to be somebody out there that says, "Oh, I only have one set of needles."
Yeah, okay, and that person needs to go on to a different channel. No, for beginners. So, and speaking about plastic boxes and other storage things, check out your dollar store for storage things. Now, I have got plastic drawers all over the place. So does Walter. And you know you can buy plastic drawers in different sizes, configurations, the whole bit. You can spend a lot of money on plastic drawers as well. So it just depends on how much of a designer sewing room you might have with that. But right behind me, you can see a set of drawers. These drawers right here, these white ones, I bought them online from Amazon. They cost me, I think, $30, and it was for a set of 6. And they lock together. You can use them singularly or they lock together. And this is where I keep all my fat quarters in here. I have plastic drawers below Walter, which I can't show you because they're below Walter. That whole fabric, I've got plastic drawers over there. I tuck the plastic drawers in spots that are basically space where you know, if you were just to throw stuff in there, it wouldn't be organized. So the plastic drawers, if I can get them in a smaller spot, like under these tables that we're sitting at right now, then they work. I'm running out of room for that. But you can find all kinds of containers at the dollar store. I showed you the blue boxes that I use for holding my fabric, for my cut pieces of fabric. I showed them last week on that. Another storage device that I really love is kitchen drawer utensil divider, or whatever you want to call it. I have one. I intended for it to be used with actually in my kitchen drawer, and didn't fit, which was a pain in the butt because it said it would fit any standard drawer when I ordered it from Amazon, and I paid about $30 for it. It wasn't a particularly cheap one, but I'm using it now to hold all my most frequently reached for supplies, because it has some slotted areas that are sort of on an incline. I'd show it to you, except that it's very difficult to show. Let's see if I can turn this around and drop it down. And where is it? Here it is. There it is. Okay, you see all those pens and everything that are sticking up?
There's a slot for scissors and a slot for your cutter, and you've got a ruler in another slot, and
then I've got pens in a pen stand. I've got clips in here. These little baskets, dollar store baskets again, they just dropped right in there. And so all of those things are organized because those are things I reach for all the time. But I said that I moved my sewing machine into our rec room when I'm quilting. I can take that whole thing, lift it up, take it in with me, and set it off to the side. So whatever I need is sitting in there. That's why I have it set up that way. I have this little one too, but this one I made. This was just for fun. I did that with my 3D printer. Okay, let's put this back here. And you in the shot. There you are. Oh, my quilt. My crappy quilt. There it is. Okay. Backdrop. So, what else was on our list? Magnets. Now, there is a warning with a magnet. People will attach magnets to the side of their sewing machine to hold things like little snips or things like that. I would recommend it's better off using what I told you about last week. I use a command hook. The reason is the jury is still out on this one, but some people tell you don't use a magnet around your computerized sewing machine because you'll scramble the computer that's inside it. Others say no, they're shielded. You don't have to worry about that. I would say you want to err on the side of caution, and I would use a command hook. But you may not have a sewing machine that has a computer system on it, or for example, if I put it on the far end of my sewing machine, it probably wouldn't affect anything because there's probably no computer.
Well, not only that, not everybody has a sewing machine that has metal on the outside.
Oh, that's true. So if you don't have that, command hooks would work. But you can use magnets for a whole lot of other things. If you get strong enough magnets, you can take two of them and you can sandwich a bunch of your fabric together, let's say for a project. Instead of using clips, you could use magnets. Do I do this? No. But I've seen it done. And the only reason I don't do it is because I just don't do it. But they're good. But other things magnets are good for, if you want to pick up your pins and things like that, you know, you can take a piece, one of those wooden dowels that I told you about if you buy a box.
You can just
glue gun it to the end of a wooden dowel, a magnet, and you've got I mean, you can buy them like that.
Yeah, I have one upstairs that's just a cheap dollar store one that's coated in plastic that was meant for picking up nails at Home Depot. Oh, right?
Well, there you go.
Can just, or I bought it at a dollar store, but you can buy it at Home Depot too. You can use one to pick up nails and stuff. You can use it, but you buy it for your sewing room and use it for pins.
Yeah. Now, if you've got a magnetic pin holder, you can just turn that upside down and run it around too and pick up any loose pins or things like that. Or if you go to purplehobbies.com, you can get one of these little devices. And what it is it picks up, there's a magnet. Magnet's right in here in this little piece that pops up. So when it's closed like that, bing, it'll pull up all kinds, and it's very strong. It'll pull up a lot of pins. And then to release them into, say, your bucket or where you're putting them in, you just push that, raises the magnet, everything on here drops. Works really well. Purplehobbies.com. I am not sponsored. They could sponsor me if they'd like. So, magnets. Cheap spray bottles. You know, if you use Mary Ellen's Best Press, is that what it's called?
Well, I thought it was Mary Ellen's.
Maybe it's Mary Ellen. Yeah, it's Mary Ellen. I don't know, it's Mary somebody, you know, Best Press. It's been around for 100 years. Lots of people use it. I use it. But, you know, if you use a lot of it, you're probably buying it in the huge bottles. And in the huge bottles, you can't really spray from. So, go to the dollar store, get yourself some cheapo spray bottles, fill them up with that, label them, and away you go. Now, I use that for soak as well. I use it for some other things. Just make sure you label those bottles, because I almost had an unfortunate accident once. I had a spray bottle in my crafting supplies, and I don't know how it got into with my sewing stuff, but it was bleach. And the label had fallen off of it, and I must have been using it for something else, like in an art thing that I was doing, and I almost sprayed it on my fabric, thinking it was Mary Ellen's Best Press. It was not. But I didn't do it, so I was safe. But label. And so speaking of labeling, if you don't have one, get one. Get yourself a label making machine. Now, these come in different price ranges, but they're cheap. They're really cheap. You can get a really decent one for under 30 bucks or whatever. This one I have actually does ribbon. It prints on specialty ribbon and stuff. So this was a little bit more elaborate. Do I print on ribbon a lot? No. But I could if I wanted to. But I can't live without this, because if you look in my sewing room, everything has a label on it. All my project boxes are labeled. All my drawers are labeled.
I have no
Everything's-
labels on anything.
No, and that's why he can't find anything. So, because once something's in a drawer, like behind me are the IKEA. Just move out of the way. There, you can see the IKEA drawers right here. And these are labels. So I know what's in the drawer because I can't see what's in the drawer. And if I can't see it, I forget I've got it. So all the drawers are labeled. Now I
know what's in my drawers.
No, you can't. You never find
know what's
anything. You don't know what's in your drawers. Right? And we won't go any further with that conversation. So Walter's trying to be funny. Well, to look at him, he is funny looking. But I use that thing for everything. Now you can get little dynamo ones too. You can get there's all kinds of different types of label makers. But I think they're a must. I can't live without my label maker. So what's else on my list here? Actually, not too much more. Power bars. I don't have many outlets in this area. Well, that's not true. I have a lot of outlets. Mind you, I'm surprised I don't blow a fuse.
Well, the thing is, though, is a lot of the equipment that you use doesn't tend to use a lot of power,
Except your iron.
Iron.
Yeah.
So
the iron draws on it, so you want to make sure it's on a different circuit than something else that's heavy. Anything that draws heat or produces heat draws a lot of power. But power bars are really great for, depending on how you set them up. You know, I turn one switch on when I come into my sewing room. That one switch turns on my iron, gets it warming up, turns on my sewing machine, turns on my overhead light, in one switch. And while you're saying, well, big deal, one switch. Yeah, it's a big deal when you're finished for the day because that same switch turns everything off, including my iron. My iron does not have an automatic shut-off on it. So this is one way to make sure that I have turned off my iron. If my light's off, my sewing machine's off, I know my iron is off too. But you can get power bars, and I have one, but I can't show it to you because it's hidden in behind my other computer that sits over there. It's a tower. Now, I saw this at a retreat. And you know, at a retreat, they usually have, you know, the tables all clustered together and maybe 4 people sitting in a cluster or 6 people. And oftentimes the organizers of the retreat or whatever will have all kinds of power bars running all over the place because we need something to plug our stuff into, right? Well, these ladies had brought with them this tower. The tower had, I think, places on it 4 sides. There was a switch for 2 of the sides at the top and another switch at the top for the other 2 sides, so you didn't have to have everything running at once if you didn't want to. And I think each one in the tower has 3 or 4 outlets, 3-prong outlets. So this is a heavy-duty one. But it also has USB charger holes too. It's got about 4 of those in it. Sucker was about $30 to $35, I think, on Amazon when I bought it. It's great. So when we could go back to retreats, that will be one of the things I will take with me because then I can plug everything I want to plug into it. And it's fused as well. Well, it's got a circuit breaker in it, right? So if you overload it, it'll just turn itself off and then you can unplug something and back up again. So yeah, look at power bars. They're good. And if you've got a spot where you can't reach your outlet conveniently, like I do, power bars work really well. But be smart about how you use them too. Like, don't be plugging in a power bar into a power bar into a power bar to get more things because they have a limit. Okay, ask me how I know that because I've done it. But yeah, see over there, this whole table, there's not an outlet over here. Well, there is. I mounted a power bar in behind Walter underneath here, and I've run an extension cord to where there is an outlet, but now I have 5 outlets under there. So my serger and my embroidery machine are plugged into that, plus I have a light plugged into that as well. So yeah, I'm the god of power bars. And talking about lighting, portable lighting. There's never enough lighting. Sewing machines never have enough lighting on them. Now, there's things you can get around that with. You can buy little lights that attach to the side of your sewing machine, kind of a thing, and then you can direct it where you want to see what you want to see. You can also buy LED strips as well that can fit right into the throat of your sewing machine. But I have a lot of light in this room. But when I go to a retreat, you don't know what you're going to have for lighting. So it's good to buy one of those portable little OT lights. They come in various price ranges. The one that I have, actually we both have one, it folds right up. And it's easy to slip into your sewing bag or whatever you're using to take all your stuff with you on the retreat. So, good thing. Couple that with your power bar and you're laughing. And one more thing that I love, and I'm going to show you this. Just let me turn on. I have another iPad in this room. And it's mounted so I can see it from my sewing machine. Now, you're going to say, well, why do I want to have an iPad there? It's not because I want to watch YouTube channels while I'm sewing. I actually have a big television screen set up over here. There. That's what I do my Zoom on. And, when I need to, if I want to watch YouTube while I'm sewing or have something playing, that's what I have for that. But sometimes, especially when I'm doing Zoom and I'm hosting it, I will have myself on the system as two people, kind of a thing. The reason is I want to be able to see everybody at once, but I also want to be able to focus in on speaker view, which I can do on my television set there. But here's what I have for my iPad. And this came from Amazon. So I've got this gooseneck. It's got a big clamp on it, which you can't really see in there, but it allows this to be really adjustable whatever way I want, and this fits over off to the side from my sewing machine. It's up out of harm's way, and I really like it. And it was something I saw on Just Get It Done Quilts, Karen Brown, and it was cheap. At the time, I couldn't believe. I think I paid $30 for it or something, or less on Amazon. They're probably still there, but it also works with your iPhone. It comes with an attachment that you can put on there for either holding your iPhone, your iPad, or for Android devices as well. So I really recommend it if you're somebody who can sew and watch YouTube videos at the same time or whatever. Okay, so I think we pretty much covered everything. I don't know, you can think of anything else? Did you bring anything else down?
Well, I brought that down.
What was that?
That's a
file?
A file.
A glass file?
It's a glass file.
Yeah.
Right.
And why would anybody want to have a glass file?
It's for if you get a nick in your what do you call it?
Bobbin case.
Bobbin case.
Mm-hmm.
You could. This is really good for filing and out the burr that's on it, or in my case, I broke a foot.
No. Yeah.
And there's a rough edge on the back of my foot. It was recommended for me to file it out with a glass file. Actually, it's a little finer file. It's really very fine file for getting burrs and that out. It's much finer than if you use like a sandpaper file or something. So that's something you might consider getting if you run into things like that.
And you can get those on Amazon.
Yeah.
In fact, that's where I think I got 2 for the price of 1 or something at the time. So that's why he has one, because I gave him the second one. So yeah. So there was, I'm going to insert it in here in a second, but one of our regular watchers, subscribers, Yvonne McNeil, and you may be familiar with Yvonne because I have shown some of her quilts before on the Idiot Quilter. She sent me a picture of a sewing table hack. She has an old door that her husband cut a hole in that's the size of her sewing machine, and she was able, on the setup that she has to drop the sewing machine down into it. And she explains that there are she uses some mason jars and things to prop it up or whatever. I'm not really sure on that. I can't remember, but I'm going to show you the little video I made of it in a moment. And so now what she's got is her sewing machine is flush with the tables that she has around it. So that would make like quilting something very easy. And it's not the expense that you can pay. I mean, you can buy a custom table that has a cutout for your particular sewing machine, and those suckers run $600 and up, depending on the size and who manufactures it and all the buzzers and bells it may come with. So I'm going to put that little video showing you her little hack right here. Another hack that was not on our list, but was one that Yvonne McNeil, one of our subscribers, sent to us, I thought was really, really innovative. She says, "Hey Stephen, thought I would send you a picture of my sewing table hack. I cut a hole in the door, covered it with Mac tack, used some mason jars to hold it up, and sunk my sewing machine into it. The machine sits on the desk and the door holds up my extended table. This leaves room underneath the door for my extra feet, leaders and enders, and my quilt finishing stitch book. Works like a charm." Yeah, that's a really great idea, and one that would cost a minimal amount. I mean, if you buy sewing tables, they cost, you know, $500 plus $1,000, whatever, up. The sky's the limit. So I think this is a really cool hack. Thanks, Yvonne, for sharing that with us. Okay, so thanks, Yvonne, for that. I think that's a really cool tip. Okay, so just what's in our show notes. The usual things. We have our favorite supply sources right now for both quilting and for sewing. And I have a link for tomorrow's. Today is Friday, July the 9th. Tomorrow, Saturday, July the 10th, is my creative birthday bash, sew along or retreat or whatever you want to call it. It's open to everybody, to all makers. So if you're a knitter, if you're a crocheter, if you're a quilter, a sewer, a paper artist, whatever, come and join us for part of the day or all of the day. It runs from 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I have no idea how many people to expect. Could be just me and Walter, or it might be more than that. And we're just going to work on our projects and talk a little bit about. I don't have anything really structured for this one. So I just want to sew with people. It's my birthday present to myself. Although technically tomorrow is not my birthday. It's not until
Wednesday.
Is it Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday. With that. So join us if you wish. And the Zoom link for it is in the show notes for you now. Okay, next week we're going to talk about our favorite sources for supplies and what we like about them and what we don't like about them. And generally, we're going to also talk about things that attract us to these sources and other sources that we don't go to because, well, there's some things we don't like about what they do. So that's for next week. So have a good week. I hope to see some of you tomorrow. And if not, we'll see you next week. So say goodbye, Walter.
Goodbye, Walter.